what I've been used to. It's no wonder that people struggle with the money side of things, is it? In simplistic terms, that pretty much summarised my issue with accounting in a nutshell. But there was another problem with it all. Accounting tutorials were on a Thursday morning, which unfortunately followed on from the biggest night out of the week. Wednesdays were the best day to be in the student union evening. Bands and drinks promotions were the norm. But generally, I made it in the Thursday morning. However, that didn't really seem to make much difference to my ability to just get this accounting piece. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I stayed in Liverpool for part of my Easter holiday break and teamed up for some revision sessions with one of the lads that I knew I'd be house sharing with in my second year. We discussed the accounting thing and why I struggled with it. He grasped it and found a way for it to make sense, and he explained it really well, in a way that helped me to understand that none of the lecturers or tutors had been able to. It's amazing, isn't it, how sometimes we find that peer in our network who just seems to help us get through a problem in a way that the pros don't seem to be able to. And I think that's largely because we go through it. It's the experience learning piece. We see it as being the end user so much more. But anyway, he showed me this framework with things slotted into a profit and loss account and a balance sheet. Consequently, this then extended to a roadmap that showed me how to easily determine whether things should be a debit or a credit. I'd been saved, and just in time, before my first year exams. Fun enough, I'd used a similar technique in my O-levels, which were the forerunner to GCSEs in the UK, for my German history exams. Find a framework, which turned out to be a series of acronyms by topical grammatical point scorer for German, and that would be my guide. And I used much the same technique walking into my accounting exams at the end of that first year. It worked well as a background to my end-of-year accounting exams, and I did okay in the end. So roll on year 2. My second year at university passed without issue, and I'd done okay again in my end-of-year exams, and we were now into the last phases of my third and final year. In the term between Christmas and Easter, the milk round, as it was known, took place. Now, this was almost an institutional thing, where large corporate employers would visit and interview prospective graduates and candidates for positions that they had due to start in September of that year. One of the most sought-after routes to employment for would-be graduates who wanted a job with a blue-chip style or size of company. This was tradition at play again. It was the expectation for most graduates that corporate was the way forward. So inevitably I played the game, because it was expected, right? I did the interviews. Something else happened during that term which changed my job course forever. Along with the corporate milk round, the professional accounting bodies came in to present to us. This covered the professional accounting firms, known as chartered accountants or CPAs in the US, the management accountants, who were typically accountants working within companies as opposed to working in a practice, and the public accountants, those who specialised in accounting roles within governmental, public sector or charity-style accounting roles. Looking back on it now, the presentations were astonishingly poor in terms of actually encouraging undergraduates into the profession. There seemed to be this very clear assumption that because you'd already elected to take an accounting and finance degree, you'd automatically be looking to become an accountant in some capacity or other. It was probably a yesteryear equivalent of the build it and they will come scenario, and we all know where that led to. Lots of websites built and lots of people not doing the business they thought they were going to. There was no sales craft in the pitches from these accounting firms. In actual fact, they couldn't have made it more unappealing if they'd tried. Just consider this. The lines that sort of went something like, you'll probably start off on a salary of about $9,000 a year. You'll have a load of additional study to get through, which will be really hard to learn and understand. But if you stick with it, then one magical day you'll become a partner in a firm, and then you can do pretty much anything you want. No thanks, there must be more to life than that picture you've just painted. So the one thing doing an accounting and finance degree taught me was that I didn't want to be an accountant. But I did know that I still loved business and the commercial piece. So what on earth was I going to do next? Now, there came a point which I refer to as my own revelation about my career. I'd done a few of the milk round interviews, and then the magic happened partway through the process. One of the companies had a graduate trainee scheme. Essentially, the idea was that you spent 6 months in each of 4 departments: finance, sales, marketing, personnel. Ultimately, you then worked out what you liked, what the company felt you were best suited to, and consequently you forged your ultimate career path from there. Now that I like the sound of. General business, business management, commercial outlook, dream job, here I come. Now, unfortunately, as so often it turns out this way, I didn't get the job with that particular company. But that part of the process had been of massive value to me. It had helped me work out what I wanted to do. And in case you were wondering what happened to the idea of being a trader working in the city, the recession at the end of the 1980s and early 1990s was in full swing, so that wasn't quite the option that I thought it was. Timing is everything, as they say. I graduated in the summer of 1992 with an upper second class degree, which I was really pleased and proud of, but I still hadn't secured a job. So the summer for me then became a tour of university-hosted job fairs, a second round of the milk round effectively. At least by this point I knew exactly what sort of job I was looking for, so I targeted my approaches accordingly. In modern day entrepreneurial terms, we would think of that being equivalent to finding our niche, really honing in on one thing and then going all out for it. I secured a couple of interviews and ended up joining a national builders merchant in September 1992. Not only was that an important moment, my first real job, but it set me on the commercial path to where I am now, and actually provided me with exactly the system that I use to this day with all my clients. Now, only 8 graduate trainees were taken on in the September, and we'd been sent to different branches across the country. By December of that same year, 4 had been made redundant. I was fortunate enough to escape that initial culling. My branch, as I was soon to discover, was one of the top 10 loss-making branches across the UK, and there were about 145 branches, so this was a really big deal, not only because it was loss-making, but it also found itself in the top 10 of that league that nobody wanted to be in. It had brought in a new manager a couple of months before I joined, but he hadn't had much of an impact at that point. The pressure on him was noticeably increasing during the final quarter in that year, and the pressure took its toll in the new year, with the branch manager actually blacking out at the wheel of his car, ending up putting his car into a tree at about 60 miles an hour and being signed off of work for about 5 to 6 months, ultimately deciding he didn't want to return to that business. Now, out of adversity so often comes opportunity, and this is another great entrepreneurial lesson. How often do we find a setback in a road path, and all of a sudden we think we don't know where to turn, we don't know what's going to happen next. But then, out of somewhere, we find a new opportunity. Somebody says something, we see something online, something sparks the interest again. And that's really what happened with me. I've been working closely with the assistant manager of that branch on the contract side of the business, and we'd got on well. So when he moved into the branch manager's role, I jumped at the chance to take on that assistant role that he'd been covering off when he was promoted. We'd managed to steady the ship over the next 3 to 6 months. It still wasn't good by any means, but it was better than it was. And he'd made inroads into improving the sales side of the business, as that was his background. He'd been a high-performing sales rep for the company prior to joining this branch as assistant manager. And what do we know about sales? They are the top line, they do come first. He played the saxophone as a side interest. The band he played in was made up of other professionals, architects, surveyors and the like, and they used to play weddings and functions and so on, and they were good. They were an eclectic group, but turns out they were so good that they were spotted at one function and were ultimately offered the chance to go and play across the USA on tour on an all expenses paid trip. Funnily enough, it'll come as no surprise that he decided to go and play saxophone rather than spend his time working in a builder's merchant. Now I'm thinking about the fact that I really should have maybe concentrated a bit harder with my violin lessons more seriously at school, and maybe that would have led down a completely different path. So there it was. Within 18 months I'd gone from graduate trainee to branch manager with one hell of a task on my hands. But I asked for the challenge. When the opportunity presented itself, I asked for it, and I wanted it. This I saw as being the making of whatever I thought was really going to come out of my professional career life now. So, you can find out how the next 18 months went a little later in the story. But it was that 18-month period that ended up transporting me to how I work with my clients now. The framework that I've adopted as my working methodology was founded and tested right there, in that loss-making branch of a builder's merchant for some 25 years, or 25 years ago I should say. Little did I know what a profound effect that experience would have on me. Taught me everything I know, as they say. Now, within that, there were a number of issues that came up. The pressure was huge. And it's one of the reasons that certainly, as I talk you through other parts of my career in time, that mindset piece has become increasingly important over the last 7 years again. As I see that entrepreneurial struggle, the mindset blocks that get in the way, the complications that people ultimately manufacture, and some of the things are very easy to get past. So that's why I'm going to be devoting an entire session to the business mindset piece a little bit later on. Anyway, following on from my time at the Builders Merchant, I'd been there 3 years in the end. I'd learned how to drive a forklift truck. I'd worked 7 days a week. I tidied the yard on a Sunday on my own, all as part of the process of turning this business around. And I think that really, it really ingrained the work ethic. It was important, but it's what I expected. I guess I didn't know any different. And that was just what was required at that point in time. But following on from that, I moved down to London in late 1995 to live with my girlfriend, now wife, and worked as a sales rep for Plum Centre for a year before joining a media agency in London, where I stayed for around 14 years. Believe it or not, I actually went into a financial role there, starting right at that bottom bookkeeping end, processing purchase invoices, sales invoices, expenses, chasing the money and making the payments, drawing up monthly management accounts and so on. And that was a fully fledged commercial CFO role by the time I'd finished. And that company grew from around $1 million to about $8 million at its peak in about 2008. I left there at the end of 2010 to pursue a freelance CFO career. And ever since then I've been focused on helping owner-managed businesses to grow profitably. That's been through a hybrid of that CFO background, coach and consultant style of support and guidance. And that was also operating for a time under the UK government's Growth Accelerator coaching scheme until that was disbanded a couple of years ago. But here's the thing. There are a lot of owner-managed and entrepreneur-led businesses that are great businesses in their own right, but they just aren't making the profit that they could or should be making. And I'm on a mission to change that. So let's take a look at that simple methodology I use with my clients now. But before that, I just want to take this opportunity to just give you a quick reminder here. Profitlevers radio show being brought to you by Coach on Fire Radio. Fortnightly show airing at midday PST, 3 p.m. EST and 8 p.m. GMT on a fortnightly basis. So our next show will be on Monday the 11th of June at the same time. So make sure you follow me on social media too to catch the profit uploads and downloads that I've got for you. Helping to address this issue of getting all entrepreneurial businesses into a more profitable state. So you can follow me on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Jason A. Withers, and you can also access my free Facebook community there. That's the Profit Levers as well, same name as this show. And on Instagram and Twitter you can find me at Jason A. Withers. On Instagram, of course, you'll be able to catch my stories there as well. So, profit, the commercial imperative. Profit is the business non-negotiable. It's why we do what we do as business owners from a commercial perspective. Yes, we want to serve. Yes, we want to make an impact. But we need profit to help us do that and expand our horizons and capabilities to do both of those things more effectively. Now, remember, right back to the beginning, one of the things that I said was, profit gives you choices. I believe that all of your entrepreneurial endeavours shouldn't go unrewarded, and so often it does. Often it's reactive, not intentional behaviour that drives us, and consequently a lesser result is achieved. Too often, profit isn't there in the quantity that it should be, or indeed could be. Too often, we miss the profit and we miss out on the things in life we want to be doing as well, because we're too busy working too hard to make that profit in the first place. For all of you who pour your soul into your business to make your dreams a reality, I want you to benefit fully from your efforts and experience the profit rewards that your energetic investment deserves. That's what this show is about. That's what my Facebook page is about. That's what my online social profiles are about. Helping you create a more efficiently profitable business.